Om. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam Trailokyam Sacharacharam Atpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vedya Dravinam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So we are still in chapter 9. And which verse are we on?
We're on verse 100 today.
All right.
102.
I think he said
No, 100.
Varnashrama vayovastha bhimano yasya vidyate tasyaiva cha vishedhachcha vidhaya sakala api. All these injunctions and prohibitions are meant for those who believe themselves to belong to a certain caste or station and stage of life.
so all the various proscriptions that we have in the Vedas and how to live our lives, depending on our caste, our swadharma, our station in life, what our religious rituals, the do's and the don'ts, even things like the yamas and niyamas, all of those are for the mumukshu. They're for the person who's a seeker after liberation. They have value in that they help to purify the heart, quieten the mind, and keep us from hurting other people by and large, too. You don't cheat, don't lie, don't steal, don't hurt people, etc. But all of that stuff to some degree falls away for the sannyasi and completely falls away for the jivan mukta, the person of liberation. For them, there are no rules anymore. This is not license, it's liberation. This is not a license to do things that hurt or harm other people. If you're hurting or harming other people, chances are you're not really a man or woman of knowledge yet. That's yourself over there. I don't know if any of you have come in contact. Usually it's teenagers who do what they call self-harm. They'll like cut themselves. For the person of realization to hurt or harm another is just like that. That's myself. Next verse.
वर्णाश्रमादयो देहे मायया परिकल्पिताः नात्मनो बोधरूपस्येत् एवं तस्य विनिश्चयः. The knower is convinced that caste, station, etc. are creations of Maya, and that they refer to the body and not to the self, whose nature is pure consciousness.
Yes. So all of those worldly strictures refer to the body, maybe, but not to the self. The self is pure. The self does nothing. The self cannot be sullied. Self cannot be improved. And the mark of the person of steady wisdom is they are identified as that chilakash. That's the most important. When I was in India in 1988, taking the Vivekachudamani camp with Swamiji in Siddhabadi, and this was really funny at the time. But the Brahmachari training course had just ended in Mumbai. You'd think these people would have some knowledge of what's going on. So the new brahmacharis had just received their yellow robes. Westerners, of course, were in white. We were all up there in Siddhabadi, and the brahmacharis were sitting in the front because they were doing the chanting and stuff. And it seems one of the brahmacharis had gone to the kitchen staff and said, "We are brahmacharis now. You should serve us first. We're important, status." And Swamiji got wind of this. He was furious. I don't think I've ever seen him before or since be that angry. And he says, "You have dishonored the teaching, you have dishonored the mission." And it's only one brahmachari, but all of them had to suffer for this. He said, "From now on, you will eat last, and you will serve the rest of the people." No room for that sort of nonsense. Somehow you're important because of the color of your cloth. All right, enough on that. Next verse.
Samadhi mata karmani ma kurotu va hridaye nasta sarvastho mukta evottamashayah. The clear-sighted knower from whose heart all attachments has vanished is a liberated soul, whether he performs or not concentration or action.
Yes, so whether or not the person of steady wisdom is lost in samadhi, nirvikalpa, or engaged in the world, it makes no difference. Why? Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. It's all Brahman. So, why does one person become a guru, become a teacher, and another person doesn't? Has nothing to do with whether or not they're men or women of realization. It's just karma. Enjoy doing it. Listen carefully. It's the students who create the teacher. You can't hang your shingle out and say, all right, guru lessons, come study from with me. It doesn't even work. People come when they want what you have. That's simple. And the work may be done in your family. Well, who's the first guru in traditionally in Indian life?
Parents.
Your parents. And that's on many, many levels. It can be at the office, be with your friends. It doesn't have to be in the formal environment of satsang or breaking open a scripture. It's all product. Next verse.
Nishkarm Nishkarmyena na tasyarthosti na karmabhihi na samadhana japyabhyam yasya nirvasanam manaha. He whose mind is free from all desires or former impressions has nothing to gain from either action or inaction, meditation, samadhi, or repetitions of holy formulas.
Yes. And the watchword here is he has nothing to gain from it. Now, I like to say the sadak, the seeker, the mumukshu, seeker after liberation, is seen to be doing spiritual practices so that they may purify their equipment and realize the self. The Jivan Mukta may also be seen chanting the name of the Lord, engaging in satsang, sharing this knowledge, pravachana, does not add to their knowledge of the self. They do it because they enjoy it. For them, it's the highest form of worldly pleasure. And they do it because people ask them. Next verse.
Atma sangasto nan syada indrajalam hi mayikam itya chanchalanir nite kuto manasi vasana. The self is associationless, and everything other than the self is a display of the magic of Maya. When a mind has such a firm conviction, wherefrom will any desire or impression come in it?
And what was the term Indrajala?
Indrajalam, yes.
Yes, which means a magician. It's a term usually used to mean how the great play of Maya comes about. Everything in the world of name and form, without exception, is just the play of mind. It's just Maya. Leela. And the person of steady wisdom just watches. What's the other term? Chanchala?
Yeah.
The root is chalchalati, which means to roam about. And it means to really roam about and move everywhere. All that move. Just Mayavi. Work of the great magician. Seen, but not real. Next one.
एवं नास्ति प्रसंगोऽपि कुतो स्याति प्रसञ्चनम् प्रसंगो यस्य तस्यैव शक्येताति prasanjanam. Thus, when for an illumined sage there is no injunction on prohibition, where is his violating that? Only for him can violation be possible who is bound by them.
Yes. So concern about, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the wrong thing? Am I doing God's will, or is it my will? Should I do this? Should I do that? It is okay to have sex before marriage. It's okay to have this or that. Can you be spiritual and not be a vegetarian? For the person of steady wisdom, all of these things are. Now, doesn't mean that the mind may not have its preferences, but those are not problematic. All the afflictions we have of guilt and shame and regret, all of that is gone. All just the work of the great magician. Next verse.
विद्यभावान् बालस्य दृश्यतेति प्रसञ्जनम् स्यात् कुतोऽति प्रसङ्गोऽस्य विद्यभावे समे सति. As a child is not subject to any injunctions and prohibitions, he cannot be charged with their violation. In their absence, in the case of a man of realization too, how can there be any violation?
So, just as children can do things that we would give you a real life example. So I was crossing the street some time ago, and there was a mother there with kids who were like 3 or 4, and one of the little girls just picked up her skirt and twirled around and then ran across the street. Now, if an adult woman did that, we'd all, what is she doing? You know. Or children will put things in their nose and their mouth and stuff like that. You see an infant eat and the food goes all down their front. We don't judge them. They're babies. They're children. Now we have to be very careful here. There are people who claim to be spiritual teachers, and then exhibit bad behavior. Yes, there are no rules, but this is not license. Just like a normal person doesn't cut themselves because I, as an ego, pervade my whole body. Why should I hurt myself? So also, the Stita Prajna Purusha doesn't hurt other people. It's not in their nature to do it. He just says, who's not afraid of the world, and the world is not afraid of them. So I always say, have a good bullshit detector. Be wary of someone who wants all your money, who wants to have sex with you, and who wants to get in there and micromanage and control your life, or you need to marry this person, or you need to take this job, all this kind of business. They've got some agenda to be running. Whether or not they're a person of steady wisdom is unimportant. Run the other direction. But does that mean they have to do the religious rituals that other people feel they need to do? Not particularly. One of my favorite stories about Swamiji, when he flew across the Atlantic, or from India over here, usually he would stop in Europe and then come over. He would always fly first class. And they would offer him a cocktail. And he would say, yes, I'll have a scotch and water. And when people heard that Swamiji had a cocktail, but he only did it when he was flying first class across the Atlantic or the Pacific, and he only had one. Yeah, I like the taste of scotch. So, oh. And for you and me, the important thing here is to not try to be a spiritual person. One of the things that is so difficult, this is what Trungpa used to call spiritual materialism. You get around groups of people in spiritual community, and then you want to appear spiritual to them. I've got a plastic smile. Oh, I'm very nice all the time. And whatever you say, Das, all this kind of nonsense. Phony deference to people. My advice, strive for authenticity. Be authentic. Be natural. Give up this, how am I doing? What do they think of me? That's a much safer way to move through the spiritual life. All right, any questions on this? Next verse.
न किञ्चित् वेति बाल चेत् न किञ्चित् द्वेति बाल चेत सर्वं वेत्येव तत्त्ववित् अल्पज्ञस्यैव विद्धयः सर्वे स्युर्नान्ययोद्वयोः. Doubt, but a boy does not know anything. Reply, a knower of truth knows everything. The law applies to one who knows a little, not to the other two.
Yes, oh, beautifully put. So you can be in the state of ignorance and the rules don't apply. You can be to the stage of agnorance, which is deliberate, unknowing. Rules only apply to those in ignorance who are seekers after wisdom. Any thoughts? Now, the Jivan Mukta may behave in accordance with the appropriate rules of society simply out of respect. He's not enjoying to do it. You know, I go to a Catholic mass. I kneel when the people kneel. I stand when the people stand. I sit when the people sit. I don't have to do that. I do it out of respect for the community that's there. When I'm in a social environment of Indian people, I pranam. It's not the way I was raised. Just don't shake hands. But that's what's socially appropriate in that social environment. You don't have to. So there's not even the rule that you shouldn't obey rules. You can obey rules if you wish. Any thoughts? Next verse.
शापानुग्रहसामर्थ्यं यस्यासौ तत्त्वविद्यते तन्न शापादिसामर्थ्यं फलं स्यात् तत्त्वसो यतः. Doubt. He is a knower of truth who can bless or curse with effect. Reply, not that, for these powers result from the practice of austerities.
Yes. So those yogis who have the power to bless or curse people, you hear stories of this in the scriptures. This is not the mark of a man or woman of wisdom. It's just another siddhi, a power. It's like having big muscles. And men and women of wisdom don't curse people. It's like saying, oh, you stupid thumb, your nail is going to quit growing. Why would you do that to your own thumb? Makes no sense. Antithetically, if you're cooking and you inadvertently cut yourself, what's your instinct? Ooh, oh, you love your thumb. So also, for the person of steady wisdom, they're not blind to the suffering of others. They see it, but they don't personalize it, even if it's aimed at them. They have enormous compassion for the suffering of others. Sometimes you can do something to help. Most of the time, there's not you can do. Except most people. Why? Because that's myself over there. It's not really over. But it's not done from the standpoint of an injunction. It's a natural response because of the non-dual vision of the jiva. Next verse.
व्यासादेरपि सामर्थ्यं दृश्यते तपसो बलात् शापादिकारणादन्य तपोज्ञानस्य कारणं. Doubt. Vyasa and others had these powers. Reply. But these were produced by some austerities. Austerities meant for knowledge are different from them.
Yes. So we need to make this distinction. These siddhis do occur. And some sages have them. Here he's talking about, did he say Vyasa or Vasishta?
Vyasa.
Vyasa. And first of all, many of the times when you hear them written about, it's a literary device. It has to do with, moving the plot of a story forward. But these particular powers are developed from doing tapas, which is different than the tapas we do that directs us towards self-realization. Now, let's move this into something far more practical. You may find, for example, that you have a gift in this world that's come to you rather easily. So, for example, how long have you been writing code?
Since I was maybe 10 years old, 10 or 11.
Yeah, came pretty easily to you. You had a love of it, you had an interest in it.
Yeah.
Long before you did you go to school to study that or something else?
I did.
Yeah. Why would a 10-year-old be interested in computers and writing code? Where in God's name did that come from? I don't know. Tapas in other lifetimes. And yet, when you were with, what was the outfit that you worked for that helped marginal populations?
Learner's Guild.
Learner's Guild, yeah. And many of these people wanted it, put in work, but for many of them it was a struggle, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
Prarabdha. Others of us may have, natural athletic ability. Oh, me. Others of us may have musical talent. I was reading a documentary retrospective, or watching it on YouTube actually, of Marilyn Horne, the great American opera singer. And she, started singing at parties and gigs when she was 5. I've heard her live. I've, seen videos of her. She makes it look and sound so easy. Maybe it is easy for her. Now, she worked very hard. But it's the same thing with spiritual siddhis. Now, here's another piece of this puzzle that we have to be aware of. We may have the great punya to have the darshan of a man or woman of realization. whose capacity to abide in the self is deep. And we may think, oh, I want that. How deeply we can revel in the self is also I think it's both Tripura Rahasyam and Yoga Vasishta that talk about orders of jnanis. Third class, second class, first class. And the lowest order of jnanis are those who have knowledge of their self nature. They know who they are. But they are not sthita prajna, meaning they forget who they are. They re-identify as the ego. When they do, they suffer like anyone else. But then their knowledge returns to them. Oh, God. Boy, did I get triggered. I totally forgot who I was. Like a bad dream. They are technically knowers of the self. Some scriptures would say they're not yet jiva mukta. That will come later. Their minds may still extrovert into the world because they can't rest in the self easily. Yeah. There's still a lot of pressure to change the Shakti. You can't wish it away. Some of this prarabdha you just have to live through. And I think it's in Tripura Rahasya, talks about the second level are those whose minds have had a lot of desire and they've done an enormous amount of tapas and vairagya to essentially destroy the mind. These are the saints who are fond of samadhi. Only come out and occasionally see the world. Tripura Rahasya said, but the highest is the one who fundamentally sees the unreality of the mind, so there's no need to destroy it. And then they become useful in the world. All of them are jnanis. Now, in Yoga Vasishta, first class and second class are completely reversed. See, that text and the Saptajnana Bhumikas, the one who's just in the ozone, barely noticing the world. The Ramana Maharshis, the Ananda Mahima. But these are not states of bondage and release. These are the post-enlightenment experiences of the jnani, not necessarily to be achieved by will or effort. In fact, if you're jonesing for these experiences, you're not really yet a jnani. The mark of the jnani is struggle at cease. A lot of paradox. But just like Puneet as a 10-year-old was there learning how to do computers. That's how you do computers. This is how you drive the car. That's how you do the computer. So also, there are those blessed souls who just can't help themselves. They love to love. Now, my experience, practically experience, it's an incredible gift to be around a person. For me, be one of these Mahatmas. Oh, this person has done a great thing. To know how much deeper into the self the mind can go. And that can be an inspiration. Anyway, any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Samartha hino nidhyaschet ati bhir vedhi varjitah vindhyate tat tapopyanye nishambhoga lampataihi. Doubt. Ascetics and ritualists despise the saintly monk who has neither such powers nor follow the injunctions. Reply. Their austerities and rituals are also despised by the votaries of worldly pleasures.
So there are those, the ascetics and the ritualists, who will look at the ascetic who has no powers and they mock him. Oh. And what Vidyaranya is saying, well, the materialist looks at the ritualists and the ascetic and mocks them. Stupid, superstitious people. So also the real person of steady wisdom is never concerned with the opinions of other people. It's like this. So, Puneet, do you see the red water glass?
I do.
Which do you think is better? A colored glass to drink water out of or a clear glass?
Either works for me.
Well, what's your preference? Do you have colored glasses or are yours clear at home? You have mason jars. I've seen them. I've drunk out of them.
Yes, mason jars too.
Yeah. Are those better than these? No. Well, why don't you have colored glass things, By the way, his opinion about drinking glasses and what he and Sound purchased versus what I purchased has nothing to do with me or the self in you. It's about a effing glass. It's inconsequential. Do you see that? So the opinions of other people are only opinions about your body and its activities in the world and the stupid things you say. Opinions, what's the slogan? Opinions are like rear ends. Everyone has one and they usually stink. Worldly person, how am I doing? Am I okay? What do they think? Going on.
भिक्षा वस्त्रादि रक्षेयु यद्येति भोगतुष्टये अहो यतित्वमेतेषां वैराग्यभरमन्थरम्. Doubt. Monks too find a pleasure in the acquisition of alms, clothes, and shelter.
Monks, you said, or moths?
Monks. Monks.
Monks. Okay.
Reply.
Read it again. I'm sorry, I got stuck on that word.
Monks too find a pleasure in the acquisition of alms, clothes, and shelter. Reply. Then what wonderful renunciation they must have, being unable to move, as it were, with their dispassion.
So the point here is renunciation is not about giving up every worldly thing. It's impossible. And if you're a bhikshu, the rules are you have a begging bowl, you will get bhiksha, which means you beg for food. And if I remember the rules, you can ask 3 times, isn't that it? 3 different places. And if you don't get any food after the 3rd time, you fast that day. So the monk, the ascetic, the bhikshu, is happy to get a meal. Probably also happy to have a place to stay. So it's okay. That's not the point. The only renunciation that's important in the end is the mind. Listen very carefully. Even desire in the end is not an impediment to realization. It's attachment and identification. It's problematic. Vedanta does not mean we need to be afraid of the objects of the senses. There's no freedom in that. Oh, God forbid, I don't want to see that. That may be, it'll trap me. That's nuts. That's nuts. We don't avoid the world. The world is essentially neutral. The issue is what I've superimposed on it. That's what's problematic. So there is no freedom in living in a dark cave. Actually, what comes to my mind, do any of you know what anchorites were back in the Middle Ages in Europe? Is anyone familiar with this term? An anchorite was a religious ascetic who would have a cell or a hut. Frequently, it was like built onto a church. Sometimes it was out in the open. And after they built it, the anchorite would go in and then they would seal off the door. And there would only be a slit available where food was passed in. And they lived in total isolation inside these little cubicles. I've never had anybody explain to me what they did about toilets. They certainly didn't wash.
Sounds like solitary confinement.
Very much so. Self-imposed. They were frequently seen as mystic fortune tellers. You know, people would go and they would sit by the slot and they would say, "Oh, what am I going to do about my daughter? She's sleeping with the dairy boy." You know, that kind of stuff. That's not freedom. That's not freedom. And many of us choose a simple life because it's easier. But prarabdha will impel you into how you live in the world. Don't worry about it. It isn't going to be better with a change of circumstances unless what you're doing is more work and more attention than you would like to have in your life. If you're working 60, 70 hours a week and you're exhausted all the time, and that keeps you from meaningful sadhana and quality of life, maybe you want to do some reevaluation of your priorities. A little bit different issue. All right, next verse.
Varnashrama paranmudha nidantet vatyuche yadi dehat mamattayo buddham nindan tatvashramam. Doubt. It does not matter if the ritualists observing the scriptural rules are abused by the ignorant. Reply. It also does not matter if a man of realization is abused by the ritualists who identify themselves with the body and so observe the rules.
Yes. So here he's saying, well, what about if the foolish people beat up the ritualists, you know, let's say in a modern day thing, oh, so and so's attacked the Swami. And here the Unani is saying, if it's your karma to be attacked, you will be attacked. What does that have to do with envy? The mark of the man or woman of wisdom is they are identified as the self. And they have no real concern for the body, its conditions, its activities. I like to use the phrase, the person of steady wisdom is out of control. They do not have a business plan for life. Unless it's your prarabdha to have a business plan for life. And if you do, knock yourself out. And either will or will not happen. But I can promise you, it won't make you happy. Just what you do to fill your time. Next verse.
Taditham tattva vijnane sadhananupamardhanat jnanina charitum shakyam samyagrajyadi laukikam. Therefore, as knowledge of truth does not affect the means, such as the mind and so forth, a man of realization is able to do worldly activities such as ruling a country.
Yes. So the point is, what a person of steady wisdom ends up doing is karmic. Prarabdha. And we have these extremes in the literature. We've got little Nachiketas, 8 years old, who's such a renunciate, he's willing to go right into the hall of death. No problem. We have stories of sages who live in the forests doing ritual. We have Vasishta, who's the court sage to Janaka. We have not Janaka. Who is Mom's father?
Something with the D, right? Krishna.
Anyway, it's Ram's father.
Darshan. King Darshan.
Darsharatha?
Dasharatha.
Yes. Then we have King Janaka, who also ruled the kingdom. And Vidyaranya is in some ways talking about himself. I have no idea when his awakening was, but he was the chief minister to the king for many, many years. Then he retired, took sannyas, entered the Sringeri Mutt, and eventually, probably because of his work and his sadhana, was chosen to be the Shankaracharya in the Sringeri Mutt. And then you have sages like Swami Tapovanam, brilliant scholar, deep man of wisdom, who would only work with 1, 2, or 3 students, loved to wander in the Himalayas, lived in a little mud hut. That's what made him happy. All right, next one.
Mithyat bubuddhaya tatre Chanasti chetahi mastu tat dhyanan vatha vyavahar dhyayan vatha vyavahanya arabdham vasatvayam. Doubt. He may not have any desire for worldly affairs, since he is convinced of the unreality of the empirical world. Reply. Let it be. Let him be engaged in meditation or work according to his fructifying karma.
Yes. So whether he lives as an ascetic and is in meditation, whether he's a gardener or a cook, whether he's a Jagat Guru like Swamiji traveling all over the world, all of that is prarabdha. It's like you are having a cattle call as an actor, and there are half a dozen plays being done on Broadway, and you do your monologue for the audition, and you have no idea which show you're going to be in or what your part is. Then the agent's saying, all right, Joe Smith, you've got the walk-on part in the first act of Hamlet. Okay. So-and-so, you're playing the lead in Hello, Dolly. Okay. You go there, you present yourself, and you're told what's the play and what's your part. That's what the Lord has done. What's the play? your particular zoo of a life. And what's your part? You may just be a supporting character. That's just fine. You may be a star. That's fine too. But it has nothing to do with liberation, and even more practically speaking, it has nothing to do with happiness. Better one's own swadharma, however void of merit, than the swadharma, than the dharma of another, no matter how meritorious. The dharma of another is fraught with fear. Ride the horse in the direction it's going. If your mind says, but I really want to have a such and such, be a so and so, have this title, this job, and it's not your swadharma, you might even to some degree get in that slot. But it'll be struggle, struggle, struggle. Whole time. Fighting the flow of your own nature. Make you unhappy. Any thoughts on this? Well, how do I know what I'm supposed to be doing? The end is the means in a different form. Start with today. Today, work, serve, have fun, be useful. This isn't a rehearsal. This is the performance. And if we're attentive to today, tomorrow will take care of itself. All right, next one.
Upa, upasak, upasakastu satatam ध्यायन्येव वसेध्यतः ध्यानेनैव कृतं तस्य ब्रह्मत्वं विष्णुताविदत्. On the other hand, a meditator should always engage himself in meditation, for through meditation his feeling of identity with Brahman arises, as a devotee has it by meditating on Vishnu.
Yes. So, not external rituals per se, but as frequently as you can, as often as you can, as deeply as you can. Remember your own self-nature. Chidananda Rupa, my nature, my form is bliss conscious. Brahmananda Rasaswad. Remember to taste the juice of the bliss of Brahman. Now, tweaking what Vidyaranya has been saying about ritual. In 2015, when I was in India, and I had gone to see Swami Tejomayananda at the newish first time I'd ever seen, hadn't been built when I was there before. Chinmaya Vibhuti, great, big, huge complex near Pune. And I went to evening arti and stuff like that at the temples. I had nothing to be gained. First of all, I wanted to see the temple out of just curiosity. And while I was there was puja going on, and it was so clear that the pujari knew what he was saying, and the ritual was beautiful. It was so beautifully and sacredly and consciously done. Any of you who've ever been to temples in India, sometimes you can really tell the pujaris are just phoning it in. You know, they're not really there. Later, I found out that the Chinmaya mission is training pujaris. So you have well-trained priests who love to do the ritual. They're not doing it because it's enjoined on them. They're doing it clearly because they love it. That's their swadharma. Knock yourself out. So even in terms of ritual, Vidyaranya is not saying ought to do the ritual if that's what you're drawn to. Do you understand this paradox? Okay, one more, and then we'll quit.
ध्यानोपादानकं यत्वद् ध्यानाभावे विलिप्यते वास्तवी ब्रह्मता नैव ज्ञानाभावे विलिप्यते. The feeling of identity, which is the effect of meditation, ceases when the practice is given up. But the true Brahmanhood does not vanish even in the absence of knowledge.
Yes. So what he's saying here is, when I'm in deep meditation, in the early hours of the morning, I remember my essential nature in my heart. Meaning in my mind, I have the thought, aham brahmasmi. That thought is not present when I'm in the world doing whatever work I do. But what the person of steady wisdom understands is, it's myself. Myself never goes anywhere. Did you do a lot of activities today?
A few, yeah.
Did you disappear during any of them? It was witnessing conscious in the midst of them.
Yeah.
Even though you may not have been thinking, oh, reminds me. Probably weren't having that kind of thought if you were having a latte, were you? No. Yeah. But you didn't disappear, and you know who you are. So Vidyaranya's point here is, well, I like the way Ramana Maharshi says, just as for the ordinary person, you don't have to keep thinking, I'm a human being, I'm not a goat or a cow or a horse or a pig. If you have real, deeply rooted knowledge, you can't ever lose yourself because you know it's you. Whether the mind is absorbed in deep samadhi or not. Mind is engaged in vyavahara, who's aware of that? It's still me. Okay, we'll end here this evening. What verse we on for next week?
118.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Guru Namaha. Hari Om.